After I reported a security breach, I was locked out of all systems and accused of tampering with company property. My director sneered, "Whistleblowers don't last long here." So I backed up everything, sent a tip to a federal cybercrime unit, and waited. During the audit, they asked for proof, and I gave them the timestamp. When I tried to log in that Monday morning, my credentials were invalid. At first, I thought it was a server glitch. But then I saw the message from IT. Access suspended pending investigation for potential system tampering. My stomach dropped. 3 days earlier, I'd reported a serious security vulnerability, one that exposed client data from a federal contract worth millions. I'd followed protocol, documented everything, timestamped the logs, sent the report to my director, Mark Rivers, and copied IT compliance. The next morning, Mark called me into his office, shut the door, and said, "Whistleblowers don't last long here. Evan, be smart." I remember staring at him, half disbelieving. "You mean people who report a security breach?" I asked. He smiled, tight, flat, practiced. "I mean people who make us look bad in front of clients." That was Friday. Over the weekend, I backed up everything. Server logs, email threads, screenshots, access records. I encrypted it all under AS-256 and stored it on a drive I kept offsite. I didn't know if they'd come after me, but something in his tone told me they would. And they did. Monday morning, my badge didn't work. My company laptop locked up, and by lunch, I was escorted out of the building by security. HR claimed I'd been placed on administrative leave, pending a review. Mark sent a company-wide email saying, "We are investigating an internal security breach possibly caused by human error." He didn't say my name. He didn't have to. By Tuesday, rumors spread that I tried to access restricted servers and alter client logs. The irony made me sick. I was the one who found that someone else had altered logs, someone who had overwritten evidence of a prior breach. That's when I realized they weren't just covering up negligence. They were covering up an active cybercrime. So I went quiet. I stopped emailing, stopped calling. I watched them from a distance. I waited until the quarterly audit, when federal regulators would be crawling through every byte of data linked to that contract. Then, I sent an anonymous encrypted tip to the Cybercrime Division of the Department of Justice, attaching redacted copies of the logs I'd preserved. 3 weeks later, during that audit, everything blew up. The investigators demanded the original incident report, the one I'd sent to Mark with timestamps showing the breach days before they claimed to have noticed anything. And here's the twist. When they asked for it, Mark claimed there was no such report, but I had proof he'd received it. Proof that couldn't be deleted. Proof sitting in a place no one at that company knew existed. When the feds turned to me and said, "Can you verify that this breach was initially reported on your account before your access was revoked?" I smiled for the first time in months, because I had something Mark didn't know about. Something that could destroy him and everyone who'd tried to bury me. Something I'd been saving for this exact moment. And it wasn't just a file. It was a trail. Before everything went to hell, I actually liked my job. I was a senior cybersecurity analyst at Rydell Systems, a mid-sized tech contractor out of Austin, Texas. We handled sensitive data for government and healthcare clients, HIPAA-level confidentiality, federal security compliance, all that. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid well, and I took pride in keeping systems clean. I wasn't the kind of guy who stirred drama. I just followed protocol, fixed vulnerabilities, documented everything, and went home. That changed when Mark Rivers became Director of Information Security. He came from a defense contractor in D.C., all sharp suits and strategic realignment talk. At first, he seemed competent, too confident maybe, but smart. He started by reorganizing our team, cutting our audit cycle times, pushing for faster incident resolution. We didn't realize until later that faster meant sloppier. He wanted results that looked good on paper. I reported to him directly. For 6 months, things were fine. Then small red flags started appearing. Logins from unfamiliar IPs, unaccounted for user IDs, temporary admin tokens that no one admitted creating. Whenever I brought them up, Mark brushed it off, probably a glitch, or, "I'll handle it with IT." except nothing ever got handled. The same weird logins kept showing up, always around midnight, always through a hidden admin portal used for contract reporting. One night, I stayed late to verify a data export. While checking server logs, I found something that froze me. An unauthorized user had accessed client data, downloaded files, and altered the timestamps to make it look like nothing happened. It wasn't a hack from outside. The activity came from inside our own network, using a director-level credential key. When I ran a trace, it looped back through a proxy, then back again to a local IP, one assigned to Mark's office workstation. That's when I realized the security breach wasn't random. Someone inside was covering up data exfiltration, possibly selling client info, and they were using company infrastructure to do it. I knew I had to report it properly. I followed every rule, created a detailed incident report, exported the logs, included evidence, and sent it directly to Mark and the compliance director. It was 4:37 p.m. on a Thursday when I hit send. At 4:39 p.m., Mark replied with a single line, "Got it. I'll review this internally." By Friday morning, the logs I'd cited were gone. Deleted. My access to the secure audit folder was revoked. And the compliance director, who I'd CC'd, suddenly didn't recall seeing my message. That same day, Mark called me into his office. He spoke in that calm, managerial tone, like I was a child who didn't understand the big picture. He said I'd made unsupported allegations, that I'd misinterpreted technical data, and then leaned forward across his desk. "Evan," he said softly, "people who make noise in this department don't last long. This isn't a threat. It's advice." I remember walking out of that room numb, half laughing to myself, thinking maybe he was bluffing. Maybe it was just intimidation. By the end of the weekend, my account was flagged for unauthorized activity. By Monday morning, I was locked out entirely. That was the first time I realized how deep this thing went. And it wasn't just Mark. Someone above him was in on it. After the lockout, I was angry, but mostly scared. My name was on a government contract. If they pinned tampering or data manipulation on me, I could lose my security clearance. That meant no federal job, no contracting work, nothing. My career would be dead. For the first few days, I called HR, compliance, even IT. No one returned my calls. The company line was the same. "You're under review for violation of data handling protocols." But they couldn't tell me what violation I'd supposedly committed. Then I got a text from a friend on the IT team. "Evan, they're rewriting logs. Your name's all over it. Get out." He wouldn't talk on the phone. Later that night, from a burner email, he sent me a screenshot of the system audit trail. Sure enough, there were fake entries showing unauthorized data copying tied to my employee ID, time-stamped after my access was revoked. Someone was building a paper trail to frame me. That's when I went into full self-preservation mode. I'd already saved the original logs, but now I started documenting everything: emails, texts, even the metadata from the files they claimed I'd altered. I used my own private hardware, offline only. I didn't go back to the office, but I watched from the outside. Mark started holding damage control meetings with upper management. A few days later, a company-wide memo came out saying Rydell Systems had contained a potential breach caused by employee negligence. They didn't name me, but everyone knew. People stopped replying to my messages. My LinkedIn DMs filled with coworkers asking, "Are you okay?" in that careful way people do when they're afraid to get involved. Meanwhile, I saw what they were doing behind the scenes. Patching over the vulnerability without fixing the root cause, trying to erase every trace of the breach before the federal auditors came in for the quarterly review. I spent my nights combing through backups. I found something I hadn't noticed before. Deep in the network logs from a week earlier, there was a recurring pattern of file transfers to an external server with an IP block linked to a consulting vendor in Virginia. When I checked the registration records, the company didn't exist. The address belonged to a mail forwarding service. Whoever was behind this wasn't just hiding incompetence. They were moving client data offsite. Then, one afternoon, I got a call from a blocked number. The voice was low, confident. "Mail. You need to stop digging, Evan." I asked who it was, but the call ended. 2 hours later, My personal email account was hacked. My password manager alerted me to unauthorized attempts from the same ISP Redditors used. That's when the paranoia really set in. I started sleeping with my phone in a Faraday pouch, unplugging my Wi-Fi router when I went to bed. I stopped using my main laptop altogether. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get worse, one of the federal liaisons for our contract, a woman named Agent Lee Harmon, emailed me directly. Subject line: follow up on your prior breach report. She wrote, "We've received conflicting information from your employer. Could we schedule a brief confidential call?" That was the first time I realized someone outside the company had noticed the inconsistencies. When we spoke, she asked straight up, "Did you send an incident report on March 8th detailing unauthorized system access?" I said yes. She said, "Your employer claims no such report exists." That's when my voice shook for the first time. "They're lying," I said. "I have the original message, timestamped and archived." There was a long silence on her end. Then she said, "Keep it safe. Don't contact them again. We'll be in touch." That night, I knew something was shifting. The walls were closing in around Mark and whoever was protecting him. But they weren't going to go down without a fight. And they had more leverage than I realized. Because the next morning, I woke up to find my name listed on a public court filing as a defendant. Redditors Systems was suing me for data theft and breach of confidentiality. They were trying to destroy me before I could expose them. The lawsuit hit me like a freight train. I sat at my kitchen table, reading the PDF over and over, not even believing the words were real. Redditors Systems Incorporated v. Evan K. Marshall. Plaintiff alleges that the defendant intentionally accessed proprietary systems and exfiltrated classified client data. They were accusing me of stealing the same files I had tried to protect. The worst part? The filing included a declaration from someone I trusted completely, Sarah Green, our compliance officer. She'd been the one who always encouraged transparency, who'd told me once, "If you ever see something wrong, don't stay quiet. Paper trails protect the truth." Her name was on the witness statement, swearing that I had disregarded company protocol and transferred sensitive files without authorization. I remember just sitting there, numb, trying to make sense of it. Sarah and I had worked side by side for 2 years. She was meticulous, honest, the kind of person who triple-checked everything. Why would she lie? That night, I called her personal number. She didn't answer. The next morning, I got a short text, "Evan, please stop contacting me. This is out of my hands." My hands were shaking when I read it. I started connecting dots. Sarah had always been loyal to Mark. She joined the company only 2 months after he did. She was the one who had direct oversight of compliance reports before they reached federal channels. If Mark had been doctoring logs, he'd need someone like her to quietly correct the metadata. I realized then, she hadn't betrayed me by accident. She'd been part of it from the start. Still, I didn't have proof, not yet. So, I started digging through old email headers and archive folders from before my access was revoked. I had one edge over them. I'd set up automated backups for every system change notification that passed through my credentials. Most employees didn't know those messages stored hidden routing metadata. Buried inside those archives, I found it. Dozens of system notifications showing timestamp edits on the breach reports. Each modification was logged under an internal user ID, SGRADM, Sarah Green's admin account. The audit trail told the whole story. The original version of my incident report, the one I sent on March 8th, had been opened, edited, and resaved under her credentials 5 hours later. The line where I mentioned that the breach originated from director-level access, Mark Rivers, had been deleted. That was the missing link, the part they'd erased. I sat there, staring at the screen, my heart hammering. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a miscommunication. It was a coordinated cover-up, led by Mark, executed by Sarah, and aimed directly at me. 2 days later, I got a certified letter from the company's attorney, ordering me to cease all contact with Redditors Systems employees and representatives. They were trying to isolate me, keep me from talking to anyone who could confirm my story. But what they didn't know was that I'd already shared everything. The logs, the email headers, the altered timestamps with Agent Harmon. She didn't reply right away. Weeks passed. I was broke, blacklisted, and scared. But I still had one weapon left. The truth they thought they had erased. Then one morning, I woke to a voicemail that made my blood run cold. It wasn't from the DOJ. It wasn't from my lawyer. It was from Mark. Evan. His voice said, calm and smug, "You really should have kept quiet. You don't understand who you're messing with. This isn't just about us. If you keep pushing this, you're going to expose something way bigger than Rydell." He paused before hanging up. "And trust me, the people behind this don't forgive." That was the moment I realized the breach wasn't just corporate misconduct. It was part of a larger operation. And Mark wasn't the top of the chain. He was just the middleman. The voicemail changed everything. Up until that point, I'd thought I was dealing with a power-hungry director trying to cover his own tracks. But something bigger than Rydell? That phrase stuck in my head. Mark wasn't bluffing. The arrogance in his tone wasn't fear, it was confidence. He believed someone powerful was protecting him. That night, I called Agent Harmon again. She didn't answer, but 2 hours later she sent a text from an encrypted number. "Stay put. Don't reach out to anyone else. You've already been flagged as a hostile actor internally. We're verifying evidence. Keep your copies safe." I read that message about 10 times. The way she phrased it, "already been flagged," told me the government was hearing Rydell's side too. Maybe they were buying it. Maybe I was the one under investigation now. I couldn't risk waiting for someone else to clear my name. I needed to expose the truth myself. Publicly, irreversibly, in a way that even Rydell's legal team couldn't spin. So I made a plan. Step 1. Isolate the real evidence. I moved all my encrypted backups to an air-gapped Raspberry Pi, running a custom Linux OS. No Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth. Pure local storage. The only connection to the outside world was a removable SD card. Step 2. Verify my timestamps. I cross-checked every log hash with blockchain verification services that stored immutable proofs of data existence. Every single hash from my March 8th report matched a verification block dated 2 weeks before the company claimed the incident occurred. That meant their official timeline was a lie, one I could prove mathematically. Step 3. Get outside help. I reached out to a journalist contact, Rosa Alvarez from the Austin Ledger. I'd helped her fact-check a piece years back about data privacy laws, and I trusted her integrity. When I sent her an encrypted message hinting that I had evidence of corporate data laundering tied to federal contracts, she responded in less than an hour. "Meet me in person. No phones. Bring proof." We met in a coffee shop on South Congress. I showed her some of the redacted logs, the altered metadata, and Sarah Green's user ID tied to the edits. Her face went pale. "This is bigger than a leak," she said. "This is criminal concealment." She agreed to hold the story until I could get one more piece. Proof of where the stolen data had gone. That's what I didn't have yet, the final destination. The ghost server in Virginia. So I called in a favor. My friend Tyler, an independent security consultant, owed me from back when I'd helped him with a ransomware job. I didn't tell him details. Just gave him the fake vendor's IP block and asked him to trace it quietly. 2 nights later, he called me back. "Evan, that's not a consulting firm. It's a shell front. The domain routes through 4 proxies and ends up on a server farm leased by a company called Merrick Data Solutions." I asked if he knew who owned it. "Hard to say," he said. "But the billing contact lists a federal subagency ID. DHS procurement code. That hit like a punch. The Department of Homeland Security. Rydell's biggest client. If the stolen data was being moved to a DHS-linked shell, that meant this wasn't just about corporate greed. It was federal-level corruption. Someone inside the government was using private contractors to funnel sensitive data off the grid. That was the something bigger Mark had hinted at. I knew if I went public too soon, they'd destroy me completely. I'd be discredited before the first article dropped. But if I waited until the audit, when the DOJ and DHS oversight teams were both involved, then I could detonate everything in one clean strike. So I built a time bomb. I uploaded an encrypted archive to 3 separate cloud servers under random aliases. The key to decrypt it? Split into 6 fragments. 2 embedded in blockchain transactions, 1 hidden in an image metadata file, and 3 stored offline. I scheduled a script to automatically send the access instructions to Rosa, Agent Harmon, and 1 other person, my brother, if I didn't log in for 72 hours. That way, even if I disappeared, the truth would surface. When I was done, I sat there in the dark, the soft hum of the hard drive the only sound. My whole life had collapsed. Career gone, reputation trashed, sleep non-existent. But for the first time in months, I felt in control. Because I knew when the audit hit, Mark's empire would burn. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have predicted, was that the audit wasn't the only thing coming. Someone else had already moved first. And the next time I saw Sarah Green, she wasn't in a courtroom. She was on the evening news. I found out about Sarah from a push notification. Rydell Systems executive found dead in apparent car accident. The headline didn't even register at first. It was the photo that did, her headshot from the company site, that same corporate smile. My chest went cold. The article said her car lost control near I-35, went off the embankment, and caught fire. No other vehicles involved. No foul play suspected. No way. Not after that voicemail from Mark. Not after she'd helped him erase evidence. I knew what this was. Cleanup. I called Rosa immediately. She'd already seen the news. Her voice was tight. You think they silenced her? Yeah, I said. And if they're willing to do that, they're not stopping there. That night, I barely slept. I moved the encrypted drive out of my apartment and hid it in a rented storage unit. I didn't even put my name on the lease. I used a friend's. The next morning, I got an email from an address that looked official, audit-office@DHS.gov. It had the right formatting, the right seal, but something about it felt off. The message read, "We've reviewed your submitted materials and would like to schedule an in-person meeting to verify authenticity. Please reply with your current location and contact number." I hovered over the sender's address. The domain was 1 letter off, dsh.gov, a phishing attempt. They were trying to locate me. They knew I was talking. I contacted Agent Harmon using the encrypted line she'd given me. Her reply came quick, just 2 sentences. "Don't move. We've confirmed internal compromise. You're not paranoid. Be careful who you trust." That last line hit me hard. Be careful who you trust. The next day, the second shock landed. Rosa called me in a panic. "Evan, listen to me. Someone broke into the Ledger's offices last night. My editor's files were wiped. Every note we had on your case is gone." I just sat there, numb, staring at the wall. Everything I'd built, every backup, every breadcrumb was vanishing in real time. But then she said something that made my pulse spike. "When they wiped our drives, they missed something," she whispered. "The copy of the log you sent me from your burner. The one with the blockchain verification. I still have it. That meant one piece of proof still existed outside my control. And that was enough." 2 days later, the audit finally started. The DOJ team and DHS oversight arrived at Rydell's headquarters. Word spread fast. Executives were being questioned in closed rooms. Mark went silent online. That's when my phone buzzed, unknown number. I answered without thinking. "Evan," the voice said. It was Mark, calm but shaken this time. "You need to stop this before it gets worse." "You mean before they find out you were selling client data to a DHS front?" I shot back. Silence. Then he said something I'll never forget. "You think I'm the one selling it?" He actually laughed. "You really have no idea, do you? You think I was running this show? You were the bait, Evan. You were the reason it worked." "What the hell are you talking about?" He sighed. "The breach? You didn't discover it. You created it. You flagged the exact moment the pipeline was live. And because of you, it got traced back to us. That's why they needed someone to burn. That's why you were perfect." Then the line went dead. I just sat there, hearing the blood in my ears. If what he said was true, I hadn't just stumbled onto a conspiracy. I'd triggered it. My report, my timestamp, my alert, they'd used it as a signal. They'd let me find the breach because they wanted me to. The cover-up wasn't just to hide data theft. It was to hide an entire covert transfer network using my credentials as a smokescreen. Suddenly, everything made sense. Why my account was revoked so fast. Why Sarah altered the logs. Why the lawsuit came down the same week as the audit. They were collapsing the trail, redirecting every forensic trace through me. They'd built me into their scapegoat months before I even knew what was happening. And now Sarah was dead. Mark was desperate. And somewhere in DHS, someone was waiting to see if I'd vanish quietly too. But I wasn't planning to vanish. Not yet, because I still had one card left to play. And it was already in motion. When the truth finally surfaced, it didn't come from the DOJ, or the audit, or even Rose's reporting. It came from Agent Lee Harmon herself. It was a Tuesday afternoon when she called me from an unlisted number. Her tone was clipped, colder than before. "Evan, we need to talk. Privately." We met in a parking garage downtown, 4th level, her rental car parked halfway between pillars. She looked exhausted, creased suit, dark circles, no eye contact. She said, "I shouldn't even be here, but you deserve to know why this is happening." I remember gripping the steering wheel, my pulse thudding. "Then tell me." She took a breath. "You were right about the breach. You were right about the cover-up. But you were wrong about who was behind it." According to her, Rydell wasn't acting alone. They were part of a federal data harvesting project masquerading as private contract work. DHS had subcontracted out to vendors like Merrick Data Solutions, those shell companies Tyler had traced. The real goal wasn't money. It was surveillance. Rydell's systems weren't hacked, they were built that way. The backdoors I'd discovered weren't flaws. They were features. Designed by government request, buried in the code, hidden from the public audit trails. Every so-called breach was actually a scheduled exfiltration event. Sensitive data quietly routed through contractor servers, scrubbed, then piped into federal databases for counterintelligence risk assessment. I felt my stomach turn. "You're saying they were spying on clients?" She nodded. "On everyone. Medical providers, defense subcontractors, NGOs, anyone handling foreign funding or sensitive communications. You caught one of the transfers mid-run. That's why they panicked. You weren't supposed to see it." I just stared at her. "So Mark and Sarah." "They were handlers," she cut in. "Internal liaisons. Their job was to maintain plausible deniability inside the company. The moment you flagged the breach, the pipeline went dark, and DHS lost one of its primary data routes. Billions in funding, years of covert infrastructure, jeopardized by a single compliance report. That's when it hit me. The reason they'd chosen me as the scapegoat wasn't random. It was deliberate." Harmon continued, quieter now. "They picked you because you're credible. A clean record, no disciplinary history, no political affiliations. When they frame someone like that, it validates the cover story. Makes it look like human error instead of policy." I said nothing, just felt my throat closing. She looked down, like she couldn't stand to meet my eyes. "Sarah didn't die in an accident, Evan. She was about to turn over evidence to me. Someone got to her first." I think I stopped breathing for a second. Harmon leaned in. "I shouldn't tell you this, but they're already rewriting your digital history. Your credentials, your project files. By next week, it'll look like you fabricated everything. If you don't release what you have now, it'll disappear. And so will you." Her hand trembled slightly when she handed me a small, encrypted flash drive. "This is everything we found in their audit systems, proof that DHS authorized the backdoor builds. Use it however you need to." I asked, "Why are you helping me?" She smiled bitterly. "Because I joined to stop corruption, not enable it. And because I've seen what happens to people like you. Most of them don't live long enough to tell the story." That was the moment everything crystallized for me. The cold, horrifying truth wasn't that Mark was corrupt, or that Rydell was crooked. It was that the entire system was designed for it, and I was the collateral damage keeping it invisible. Mark hadn't lied when he said I didn't understand who I was messing with. He meant the government itself. By the time I left that parking garage, I'd already decided what I had to do. Not just to save myself, but to make sure the truth saw daylight, even if I didn't. And the way I did it, what I unleashed next, would take everything from them. Their contracts, their reputation, their immunity, all with one keystroke. I waited until the night before the audit summary was due. I hadn't slept in 2 days. The only light in my apartment came from the glow of my monitor and a cheap desk lamp. The flash drive Harmon gave me sat beside my keyboard, the final piece in a puzzle that had consumed a year of my life. Everything was ready: the digital dead man switch, the timed release scripts, the encryption keys scattered across multiple systems. The data was packaged into a single compressed archive. Logs, email headers, timestamp chains, the altered compliance files, and now, thanks to Harmon, internal DHS memos authorizing data capture partnerships through third-party vendors like Redditors systems. I called the file Project Glasshouse. At exactly 2 a.m., I authenticated into one of my decoy accounts, uploaded the encrypted archive to 3 separate hosting nodes, and triggered the script. In 30 minutes, unless I manually aborted, the system would send out the decryption key to every journalist, oversight committee, and investigative watchdog I'd queued. For those 30 minutes, I just sat there, sweating, my hands trembling over the keyboard. My entire future hung on that timer. If I went through with it, there was no undoing it. If I didn't, I'd vanish like Sarah. 20 minutes in, I got a call. Private number. I knew before I answered who it was. Mark. He didn't yell. He didn't beg. His voice was low, resigned, like a man already buried. Evan, don't do this, he said. You think you're exposing corruption, but all you're doing is burning yourself alive. You'll go to prison. I said nothing. They'll call it espionage, he continued. They'll say you leaked classified systems. They'll use the Patriot Act. Evan, do you understand what that means? You'll disappear. The timer hit 15 minutes. Mark, I said finally, you built this. You let them destroy people. You killed Sarah. She made her choice, he said coldly. We all did. 10 minutes. You could walk away, he said. Delete it. Take a deal. They'll let you live if you stay quiet. I almost laughed. I'm already dead. 5 minutes left. He said my name once more, quietly. Then the line went dead. At 0, the script executed. A wave of digital triggers fired simultaneously: emails, public drops, mirrored uploads. Within minutes, journalists at the Austin Ledger, The Intercept, and Reuters received links with full documentation. Oversight offices got auto-forwarded evidence chains. Even the DOJ got copies of its own internal audit files, with my annotations showing how they'd been manipulated. By sunrise, Project Glasshouse was trending on every major platform. Rydell's offices were raided by noon. Mark was taken in for questioning by evening. DHS denied everything at first, but the memos were too detailed, too damning. By the end of the week, congressional hearings were announced. Rosa's story ran front page nationwide. My name wasn't in the headline, but anyone who'd been inside Rydell knew. I was the whistleblower. They did try to bury me anyway. My accounts were frozen, my professional licenses revoked, and an anonymous warrant surfaced for unauthorized disclosure of classified information. I disappeared for a while, different name, different city. I watched the chaos unfold from cheap motels and burner laptops. Mark never resurfaced. Word was he cut a deal and entered witness protection. Sarah's death was officially reopened as a homicide investigation. Harmon resigned from her agency the next month. And Rydell Systems? Gone. The company folded within 6 weeks of the leaks. Contracts canceled. Executives indicted. The network they built, the hidden data pipeline, was dismantled piece by piece under public scrutiny. It didn't bring me peace. I lost everything. My career, my safety, most of my old life. But I remember sitting on a motel bed in Albuquerque, watching a senator on live TV saying, "This marks the largest domestic surveillance exposure since 2013, and I felt something close to satisfaction, because for once, the truth didn't die in a boardroom. For once, the system that silenced people like Sarah and me had to answer for it. And maybe someday they'll forget my name. Maybe they'll rewrite the story, make it cleaner, safer, easier to swallow. But there's one thing they'll never erase. Every time someone opens those archived files, every time a journalist cites the glasshouse leak, they'll see the original timestamp. March 8th, 4:37 p.m. The moment I refused to stay quiet. And that's all the closure I'll ever need.